Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me, and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 62 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're lucky to be joined by Ellen Busch today. Ellen was diagnosed with dyslexia in childhood and defied expectations. Her parents nurtured her beyond academic confines, teaching her to navigate the ocean, excel in team sports, and embrace adventure. Despite self-esteem struggles, she became a skilled skier and earned bachelor's and master's degrees. Battling low self-esteem and trauma, Ellen persevered, escaping abuse and seeking healing. Through coaching, therapy, and training, she reclaimed her power and is now thriving and fearlessly pursuing her dreams. It's great to have you on the show, Ellen.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here from the other side of the world.
Yeah. So I'd like to start by asking you about that journey in the early days of being diagnosed with dyslexia as a child. What was that like?
Sure. So it's pretty interesting. Originally, I was diagnosed as being ambidextrous, which is not very uncommon. That led to further testing. And then a few months later, I was diagnosed as dyslexic. And I was either 6 or 7 years old. I don't remember exactly how old I was. And unfortunately, with that came an academic condemnation. And it was very difficult because the view at that time, this was the 70s, was that it was associated with an intellectual disability. And my parents were told in a parent-teacher conference that I would not go on to college. I would not contribute to society other than as a wife and a mother. And they should really focus on finding a husband who would take care of me.
Wow.
It was pretty awful. And I actually lived in a New York City suburb, which is still today, a very affluent community. People move there for those schools. And that's what I was facing. And from that point forward, all the way through until I went away to college, I was a second-class citizen. Low expectations. Why are you working so hard? Everything was just everybody else was geared towards going to college, and I was geared towards not going to college or doing anything of any significance. And so that ended up being a daily battle for me. Every day, every test, every lesson, every test question was a battle, and I had to work through that step by step. I'm just incredibly fortunate that I had amazing parents who just did not accept what the administrators told my parents. And they got to work and they did everything they could to support me.
We had another guest with dyslexia on the show, and she was saying that all of that hard work actually made her more successful in the end because other kids who could just coast their way through. They
Yeah.
didn't have the grit that you probably developed over that time.
I agree with that 100%. One thing I did learn was that I could outwork everybody else.
Mm.
And yes, it does develop grit, and it develops it at a very early age.
Mm.
So you learn how to fight through things and how to persevere, whereas, a lot of kids don't have that opportunity to learn it. They are not challenged to learn those things.
Mm.
And then on top of that, my father, who was an Army veteran, understood how important that was, and that the real life lessons happen outside of the classroom.
Mm.
So as a little girl, he was teaching me everything he knew. I learned how to navigate his boat, how to read the water, read the ocean, read nautical charts. And I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And he was teaching me these things.
That's awesome.
It was fantastic. And I loved it. Again, life skills. And then at 15, he sent me on Outward Bound. And at the time, that was the youngest they would take us. And at 17, he sent me to get certified to scuba dive. So again, outdoor challenges, sports challenges, always played a sport every season in high school. So what I've learned is that I could take my successes outside of the classroom, especially Outward Bound and the challenges of scuba diving, and I could bring that back into the classroom. And I had some success I could grasp onto and say, well, if I can rappel a 150-foot cliff on Outward Bound at age 15, I can get through this test. So I really learned how to pull those out of classroom successes into the classroom.
I love that. Did that mean that you could do assignments about some of those outdoor adventures?
I did. If I had the opportunity to pick a subject, it would be about those exciting adventures and things that I loved doing.
Yeah, they sound amazing. What was it like when you went to college? Was it better or?
It was great. Well, I got away from a lot of the stigma. Now, I went to Northern Vermont University, which at the time was Johnson State College. I needed some support services, things like proofreading papers and things like that. I was a little behind in math. Math has always been my weakest area. But that particular university had a tremendous amount of support services. So it was really a perfect fit for me. But the attitudes of the professors was one of support, not one of condemnation. And I was always very upfront with, my learning style. And I would, the first day of class, I would introduce myself and say, hi, Professor Jones. My name is Ellen, and I'm dyslexic. And they all but one of them said to me, what can I do to help you?
That's great.
So it was completely different, and I thrived. And my bachelor's degree is in allied health, and that is not an easy major. And that's classes like anatomy, physiology, genetics, chemistry, exercise physiology. Tough subjects.
Yeah, all those Latin words.
Yes, exactly. I think sometimes it would be wise to take a little bit of Latin before jumping into that major. It would help a lot.
What techniques did you learn to deal with that? So you talked about hard work, but were there specific learning styles that did help?
Yes. So one of the things I have learned is that I'm a very visual learner. And I actually believe that many, and I can't say this for everybody, but my experience in being dyslexic is that I'm such a strong visual spatial thinker that I think in pictures and I don't think in words. And I think as children, when we're starting to learn language, we have an extra layer of translation that we have to learn because we're not language based, we're visual based. So to answer your question, in the classroom, I used visual aids whenever possible. And I always asked, my anatomy and physiology professor, he said, what can I do? And I said, I need to see it. I just need to see it. And he would draw the muscle or the bone or whatever it was, he would draw it on the whiteboard. And my short-term memory is terrible. My long-term memory is excellent. But, especially in taking anatomy, because it's all memorization. You have to memorize the muscle, its name, its origin, and its insertion. And that's very difficult for me. But what I found was what is called the anatomy coloring book. And the name of the muscle is bubbled. So you color in the name of the muscle, and then you color in the muscle the same color. So I learned to associate the color with the name and the origin and the insertion, and that I could visualize it. And I would sit there in my exam, and I would visualize what I had colored in, and that's how I got around. That was my workaround.
Love that.
Yeah.
The visual style of thinking, do you find that allows you to solve problems in a different way to other people? I remember Richard Branson is apparently famous for looking at things upside down, and he attributes that to a lot of his success. Do you find the same thing?
I do. I can see, and it's not just visualization, it's also the ability to see patterns. Patterns and gist that most people miss. And another way to describe it is it's kind of like we're born with CAD software. So I can take an item, say this mouse, I can visualize it, rotate it in my head, I can take it apart, I can put it back together, I can redesign it. And one of the interesting things is that NASA actually specifically recruits scientists who are dyslexic because of that exact skill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Has that been a recent thing or something they've always done?
I don't know the answer to your question. It's something I read. It's probably pretty recent, but that's really a guess. And that I've read that British intelligence services, for their analysts, they are specifically looking to hire and recruit people who are dyslexic because of the ability to see patterns and gist that other people miss.
That's amazing, the turnaround to go from condemnation as a child to these high-profile organizations now seeking out dyslexic people.
It is. It's a drastic change. But I think those are very forward-thinking people. So the general perception of the public is still not very positive.
Yeah, I notice even in myself sometimes that I have stigma against spelling mistakes and things like that, and I'm trying to get better at unpacking that. But it's funny how that there probably is a lot of stigma, and probably comes from spelling bees in childhood and ranking children based on that. I'm hoping that that'll change in the future. And are there improvements from technology that are in some ways making some of these difficulties less of an issue? Things like text to speech and spelling improvements via software?
Yeah, especially the spell checker. And then, how just rewriting sentences, the AI, how it'll rewrite a sentence so it's a little bit more, appropriate. Super helpful for me. I did write my book, but I worked with a writing coach, and she really helped me to move away from just telling a story about what happened to telling a story about what happened and how I felt and how it impacted me. And that's very different. And then I went through many editing processes, which it really needed. So very happy with how it came out. So,
yeah, it's great. It's amazing that you've been able to write the book, and I love that tweak that the coach recommended to sharing the inner experience as well.
Yeah. She taught me that how you tell the story is as important as the story itself.
Yeah,
and she's an
sense.
She's an award-winning poet and a novelist. So she was a wonderful guide.
That's wonderful, Ellen. You're mentioning the book. Could you tell us a bit more about the book, and also any other projects you might be concentrating on at the moment?
Sure. I just have to. So this is it. And the name of it is Disempowered, but the DIS is crossed out because I went from, thank you. My friend came up with the title.
Love it.
I started out in elementary school completely disempowered. And I had to fight my way through, an education system that was actually working against me. And I had to become empowered. And it took a lot of work, and it's a commitment. And it's still evolving with me. It's still happening. I'm still learning and I'm still growing. But now it's about self-discovery and going after my potential, which is very different.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also, it's like the idea of like when you're struggling against a education system that doesn't seem to be seems to be built for someone else, right? Rather than you.
Mhm.
The question starts becoming like, how much do I fight against it and like swim against the tide? And how much do I basically push the responsibility back onto the system, like the teachers and the people that are I guess perpetuating it? Like,
Yeah.
was that ever a question that came across your little 11-year-old 12-year-old brain when you were in the primary and high school systems?
Yes, but I think it was more on my parents. So they always encouraged me to do my best. They always, supported me. They helped me with my homework. My mom was a class mom, so she was in the classroom. They were at the parent-teacher conferences. They were always there. They showed up. And at home, there was a lot of psychological support from them as well. My dad and I had a mantra, and our mantra was, prove them wrong, Ellen, prove them wrong. You know you can do it. You know you can do it.
Wonderful.
And in fact, that became really a part of my life. And there were times when I was in college, so I'd gotten through all of that and I was away from home. And, finals are a tough time for anybody. And I would get overwhelmed and I would pick up the phone and I'd say, Dad, I need a pep talk. And he'd say, you know what, Ellen? He'd say, I believe in you. I believe in you and you can get through this. Just like we always said, prove them wrong, prove them wrong. And
that's so nice.
That's pretty incredible. So I wouldn't have had this success had they not been the people who they were. So I really have to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, your parents are, sorry, I was just going to say your parents sound like wonderful, supportive people. Yeah.
They were. I feel like I haven't answered your questions fully.
That's okay. No, that's okay, because I think I kind of took us off track as well, as I tend to do sometimes. So like I guess we were talking about your book as well. Like, are there any other things you're working on at the moment, or are you in full like book promotion mode? Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of things. Book promotion is one thing, and doing, love being on podcasts, and I'm so excited to do this internationally too. This is really exciting. So, and then I'm also taking a coaching class. So one of the things I want to do is coach other people who are dyslexic and parents of dyslexic children, because I know what it's like to go through an education system that isn't made for you. And I can help. I've learned a lot and I can help. And I actually feel a very strong sense of responsibility to share what I've learned. And that was really the impetus behind writing the book. And now it's what motivates me to coach people, because I've figured some things out. I don't know if you're familiar with the hero's journey concept.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
But please tell more
Sure.
to our listeners. Yeah.
So, you take on the challenge. Well, first you refuse the challenge, you take on the challenge, and then the last you've overcome and you're successful. And then the last piece of the hero's journey, and I'm way oversimplifying this, is to bring home to your tribe what you've learned and those skills and experiences. So that's where I am in this process. And I am just totally driven to do that. It really is it's my purpose in life. So that's powerful, very, very powerful. And then on a recreational level, I am learning how to telemark ski, which is incredibly difficult to learn. And there have been times I've questioned my wisdom in taking on this challenge.
That's so cool. I've done a little bit of telemark skiing as well, and I always admire people who can do it well because it looks so beautiful, the curves compared to parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do cross-country skiing as well?
No, I'm primarily alpine or telemark. I'm told it takes 3 full seasons to make the transition, and I'm just finishing up season 2, and I'm really starting to feel comfortable with it. But I won't even put on my alpine gear anymore. I've drank the Kool-Aid.
I love that.
So I've been training with a group. I've been with a club at Breckenridge, and it's an instructor-led club. So we're always learning and improving. And that's been incredibly helpful. Makes a big difference.
That sounds really fun. Do you still do the scuba diving and boating and the other things that you did as a kid?
Well, I live in Colorado.
Okay.
So
not too much
I've
scuba
been
diving?
here for not a lot of scuba diving here. Probably the next time I take a tropical vacation, I certainly would go diving. But I've been here 3 years, and I actually moved in the middle of COVID. And I love the mountain lifestyle. All winter long, I'm on my skis, and I have a whole community of friends that I'm with on weekends. And then in the summertime, it's all about hiking. So I love exploring. I mean, there are hiking and biking trails everywhere around here. So
yeah, it sounds like a mecca for outdoor activities.
it is. And a lot of people move here for the lifestyle. And there's very few what we call native Coloradans. Because everybody's overwhelmed with people like me who move into the area. So
I follow a blogger who was living in Colorado, and now he got sick of the cold. Now he spends the winter in a warmer state. But it sounds like for now you're really liking the cold weather.
It's all about the skiing, and if you're going to ski, you're going to have to deal with the cold weather.
Yeah,
it's not going to be an option.
Yeah. You were mentioning earlier that you've had to work really harder than other people. Do you find it hard sometimes to switch off with that mindset of proving them wrong? Or has that been okay? Have you been able to balance your pursuit of, say, writing and working with outdoor things and being able to relax a bit?
That's a really great question. I think when I was younger, it was really rough, especially as a child. We just don't have the emotional development to really understand how to cope with some of these things. I wouldn't consider myself a child that had behavioral issues, but I certainly would lash out and have outbursts because of my frustration level was so intense. The way that I coped was through, being athletic. And doing physical things. And then I would exhaust myself, and then I would just fall asleep. As an adult, I am an avid meditator. I have a meditation practice, a breathwork practice, and then also a journaling practice that is daily for me. We can also throw some visualization practices in there. And I use that. I actually started doing this in college. I have learned to just shut my brain down. I call it the reboot. And I would take breaks in college because I'm still having to work much harder than everybody else. And that's exhausting. And it's mentally exhausting. So I learned to just kind of set aside, just take half an hour, 45 minutes, and I think I was going into a meditative state, but I just didn't know that I was doing it at that time. I didn't label it that way. And I would just time to just shut everything down, give yourself a minute to just clear out your brain, and then I could get back to work. But there are times where I get so much adrenaline going, it can be hard to dial that back a little bit. And yoga is a huge help with that for me now as an adult.
Yeah, that sounds like a really wonderful wind down practice. I also really love the meditation, yoga, journaling as well. Those are my pillars of winding down. So I think those are really good. Could you tell us a bit more about how you optimize your, like during your awake time and your work hours? Can you tell us more about how you optimize your productivity?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that I've realized is I'm not a robot. None of us are robots. And I think taking breaks throughout the day, I do a lot of spot drills, or what I call spot drills. I think it does two things. I think it gives you a little brain shutdown time, or it can take you away from what you've been focused on and just give you a little bit of a mental break. And then I think also we spend too much time just sitting at our desks.
Yeah.
And I think, what do they call it now? Sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Ellen. Before we continue, Ellen, could you tell us a bit more about
Sure.
what spot drills are? Because I'm not really familiar with that, and maybe some of our
Sure.
listeners aren't either.
Yep, I can understand why. It's kind of a new concept. It can be anywhere from taking 15 minutes doing some yoga. I like to do things that are a little bit more vigorous. Maybe do 50 air squats, maybe do 25 burpees. In my living room, I have a yoga mat laid out, and I have my foam roller, and I have some, dumbbells, kettlebells, or maybe I'll just do some push presses, or a quick combination, just a quick little WOD. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, that's it. And it can even be less. It can be 10 minutes just to get blood moving, circulate, lymphatic fluid moving, your blood moving, breathing, increasing your heart rate. And that also can burn off some stress. It's a really good tool. So my goal is to do at least three of those a day. I'm trying to get up to 4, but I haven't gotten there yet.
They sound really good, Ellen. Yeah, it sounds like a really good way of spacing like the mental work. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And sorry, I interrupted you. So you were talking about other ways that you were optimizing your productivity. So there was the spot drills, and there were a few other things. Could you go on with those, please?
Sure. The biggest thing for me personally is I just can't sit for 8 hours. I have to get up and move. So I really try and break up my tasks throughout the day, where I may say, all right, I'm going to do this for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to go and empty my dishwasher, and that's okay. Or I'm going to go, okay, and then I come back to the desk and then work for 15 minutes or even a half an hour, whatever that particular task is. Oh, okay, let's go do a spot drill. Okay, back to the desk. Okay, let's go get the mail. So just really breaking things up, constantly breaking things up, because I think that's, for me, that works. I just cannot sit there and do the repetitive thing over and over and over. I just can't do it. So yeah, and then throw a little meditation in there, throw in a couple of sun salutations, really just trying to mix it up all the time. And the other thing too is there's a psychological aspect of that, to be really comfortable with saying, you know what, this is what I need to do to take care of me. And that really matters. And it actually makes me more productive when I take these breaks and do these things than if I just tried to sit there and just go straight through the day with just a lunch break.
That sounds really good, Ellen. One other thing I wanted to ask you about was, are there any parts of like productivity advice that's out there that you find like particularly unhelpful?
Ooh, unhelpful. I think this is something that's starting to grow, and we're starting to understand a little bit better. But this idea that we have to be multitasking and doing 5 things at once. And I see a lot of, or I used to see in a lot of job descriptions, multitasker. I don't think that really works. And I don't mean to sound like I'm contradicting myself, because when I was talking about, taking those breaks, it's coming back and forth and doing one thing. But this idea that we're on, trying to do 3 to 5 things at the same time, I don't believe that works. And I think that's unhealthy, and it's unhelpful. And I think it probably puts a lot of stress and inappropriate expectations on some people.
Yeah, I'd agree. I love what you're saying of mixing up the concentrated work with going and doing some physical breaks. I'm so inspired that let's take a break right now.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
It's really inspirational amount of physical activity you fit in the day, Ellen. I think there was probably a time in my life when my weekly exercise would probably be only 15 to 20 minute sessions. They're longer now, but yeah, in your spot drills, you're probably getting in more exercise in each spot drill than some people are getting daily, like, like the daily workout.
Right. I've always been an athlete. I've always been active. I've always been a person who loves to move, but it's just such an important part of overall health and longevity.
Yeah, definitely.
And Yeah, I think it matters much more, and I'm past the big 50. So, and I'm an avid skier, and the way that I'm going to be able to continue this lifestyle is to keep moving and keep
Yeah.
myself as healthy as I can.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, we're back from our break. We actually did a spot drill with Ellen during our break. We're feeling invigorated, blood is flowing. So the question I want to ask next is, how do you manage communication with people who are neurotypical and maybe thinking about, say, with the teachers, and you talked about how you were very proactive in talking to your professors, explaining that you're dyslexic. Is that something that you now do quite often?
Yes, because my book is all about that story. So I have put it out there to the world, so there's no pulling it back at this point.
Yeah.
But especially bringing that into my coaching, and I think the most important skill is active listening and really listening deeply to what somebody is saying to you. And then also understanding that they may have a very different perspective. And it's okay to ask for clarification. In fact, that's a really helpful thing to do. Or to reflect back. That's a really big coaching skill because it's a way of asking for clarification.
Yeah. Would there be an example of where that's come up recently?
Ooh, that's a good one. I do have a coaching client who I'm working with, and it was really interesting. We were working on what we call the 5-mountain plan, which is working on her goals for the physical, emotional, mental, intuitional, and spiritual parts of her life. And when we got through 5 of those, and then I was taking notes and I read it back to her, everything that I reflected back, everything from my notes, and she was completely blown away because she could hear it and she could see it in front of her, and she could also see where they were overlapping, where one goal in the physical realm was supported by a positive mental attitude from the mental realm. So that's probably the best example I can think of at the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds very powerful, and I can think of examples of the opposite for me, where I think I've understood someone and actually I haven't at all. And maybe if I had done that exercise of restating what I thought they had said, we might have discovered the mismatch. So I might try and employ that technique myself. And I love the 5-mountain plan. It's a really nice way. It sort of sounds like the life wheel, but in a mountaineering sense.
Sure. Well, that I have to give full credit. That comes from my coach training, which is led by retired Commander Mark Devine, who is a retired Navy SEAL.
Very cool.
So this is his program. But I've been learning that skill as I've been moving through the coach training program.
That's wonderful, Ellen. I've heard good things about Mark Devine. I think I heard him on a podcast as well. It sounded very impressive. So it's great that you're getting coached by him. I'll have to look into that.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit more about your morning routine and how that's evolved over time?
Sure. So I start out every morning with a large glass of water. I give myself time to wake up, and I actually set my alarm clock about a half an hour early, because I've learned that we move from a different state of consciousness when we move from sleep to wake. And that takes a few minutes. And, especially as a born and raised New Yorker, the expectation, leap out of bed and grab that coffee and get out the door, that's just not healthy. So I give myself time to become fully conscious and wake up. And then I do several rounds of box breathing. I actually have an app, and this also comes from Mark Devine's program. Very important, sets a great tone for the day. And I have my journaling. I start out with writing 3 things that I'm grateful for. And if I have had a dream that I might want to write down, or something that's on my mind, that goes in there too. It's not a very long practice. I'm not writing pages and pages. Sometimes it's just a few, it can be less than 3 minutes. And then I do some yoga and some stretching. Again, it can be very short, or if it's a Saturday, I might do half an hour. It really depends on what my day looks like. But I've learned, and I think this is really important, I've learned to implement these things by using micro goals. So I used to have no morning routine whatsoever. And then I started to learn how important it was. And I had never journaled before. I'm like, oh, how do I create this? And it's all about creating a habit. So that's where I started. All right, I'm going to journal. I'm just going to write 3 things I'm grateful for. That's it. And created that habit, got that going for quite some time. And then you can build on it from there. But the key is the micro goals.
Yeah, I love that. You just start super small and you build out from there. That's like James Clear 101. Atomic Habits. Yeah. Atomic Habits for anyone that I went on a podcast the other day and I was talking about James Clear and they just looked at me blankly and I said, oh, well, he's the guy that wrote Atomic Habits. They go, oh, Atomic Habits. Yeah, no, Atomic Habits. It's so funny. Sorry, but I digress. We mentioned a little bit about how you wind down in your rest time. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you do you do anything to try and optimize your sleep to make sure you get the most out of it? I remember you talking about meditation, journaling, yoga. They probably do great things. Is there anything else?
Yes, actually, there's a PM ritual. So we have the AM ritual and then we have the PM ritual.
Wonderful.
And that is, that's also a little bit journaling, but it's more just a recapitulation of the day. What went well? What didn't go well? What did I learn? And it's really important to do this holding the context of non-judgment. It's just about learning, like what went well. And if I missed something, if I missed the boat on something, okay, we can work on that, but I'm not going to sit there and beat myself up. And then I move into breath work again, the box breathing. And maybe I'll listen to a meditation online on an app. Insight is a great app. But then that's really it. Again, it doesn't have to be long, but that's enough to kind of pull everything together and really prepare myself. We call it sleep hygiene.
Yeah, that sounds like a really restful way. And from what you were saying in the past, you haven't really had problems sleeping. You exhaust yourself during the day, so you
exactly
jump into bed afterwards.
Yeah.
Where can our audience find your book and where can they connect with you?
Sure. So I am on Amazon. If you just put my name in, and just a little funny thing here, my last name is Busch, Busch. So you already know where I'm going.
The president?
Not like the president, like the beer. So
okay.
Most people get that. Anheuser-Busch. Apparently it's a very common name in Germany. My website is ellenbusch.com. You can always reach me through there. And then I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram is ebush1500. Facebook, it's just my full name. But I'm always happy to talk with people. My purpose now is to help people. So,
Ellen, it's been wonderful having you on. Do you have any final words or asks for our audience?
Yes, I would offer that if you are dyslexic, if you're neurodiverse, if any one of those, if you fall into that bucket, please know that you're not broken. You have amazing abilities. You're just outside the mainstream. And really, if you want to excel, focus on what you're really good at and explore that. You might be surprised what you find, but you're not broken.
Wonderful. And we'll wrap the show with that.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.